Ladies and gentlemen, please do take your seats. We'd like to commence as soon as possible. We're just waiting for one more of our keynote speakers to come through, and then we'll commence. But in the interim, please take your seats. And we will commence in a couple of minutes. Thank you. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure again to welcome you to day 3 of IMC, a historic event for the industry, for the country, and for all of us who are looking to make India the focus of what is going on globally. And so we're very, very happy to have our keynote session. Just a word of apology, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad could not make it to the forum because of another commitment, so we apologize on his behalf. But the rest of the keynote session speakers are here, so let me call them up to the forum here. So I'd like to invite Mr. Matthew Uman, who's the president of Reliance Jio Infocom. I just saw Matthew walk in. Matthew, please come on up and take your seat, please. We have, Mr. Sumit Arora. Please come on up. Sumit from the Cisco. We have Mr. Anupam Srivastava from our Chairman and Managing Director of BSNL, so please come on up to the stage. We have Mr. Steve Alexander. Please to come up and take your position as well. And so thank you for all of our key participants in the keynote address. Steve, thank you, please. So old friends meeting again, I guess. Anyway, nice to have the type of getting to know one another acquaintances. So without any further ado, to all of our valued participants over here on the floor, thank you for coming so early in the morning, by Delhi time that is. And so let me invite Mr. Matthew Uman of Reliance Jio Infocom. We've had the pleasure of listening to Matthew previously. Speaks with evangelical fervor on issues that are close to his heart. And it's good to have him back over here on stage. So Matthew, so please address the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajan. Appreciate that. Hopefully he won't call me an evangelist after this. And it's a pleasure and indeed privilege to be here. And I know our minister, Sri Ravi Shankar Prasadji, is not here, but for all of us to be here today, for me, and I'm sure for each one of you, there is no other place. And I genuinely say this and repeat this, because on the planet, we as a nation, we as a country, have the largest transformation with all the right building blocks being put in place. In fact, when I think about it, the last few years, we have got rid of some of the hiatus in decision-making and have been motivating and driving as the government, the industries and businesses to succeed, and actually with accountability and transparency to deliver. Ideally, we should have had our minister to be here, and the reason being, there is no better person to have been here today, because he started the journey actually with us, and he drove this from the front. And it's my pleasure actually to also see here, by a pleasant surprise, a gentleman by the name of Steve Alexander. More than 23 years ago, I've had the pleasure of creating patents with him, so in the optical space. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Steve, and good to see you. And of course, Shumita Arora, and none other than our own Mr. Anupam Srivastava. I think what we have is a wonderful team, ladies and gentlemen. And there is no other person, and I, for the sake of repetition from day before yesterday, than the Prime Minister of India, who says we don't need a change. We don't need an incremental change. What we need is a brand new India. Now, the good news, all of you would have seen, the last week and this week, every operator has been committing to 4G, VoLTE, and an all-IP network. It's a great welcome step because that lays the foundation, if you will, for data adoption and acceleration. From 20 crore to 150 crore GB a month, with just 155 million LTE phones. Imagine the opportunity with over 1 billion devices. And it is not just about the new market that it brings. The all-IP network brings the cost efficiency, the operational efficiency this industry badly needs. And I'm glad everyone has accepted that. And I'm also glad, if you will, that this new market opportunity for over the 1 billion people, we are together as an industry, is going to deliver on it. Not just for top line and bottom line, but also as part of impacting the 1 billion lives. Not just for connecting the unconnected, not just for broadbanding the unbroadbanded, but, like I said earlier, servicing the unserviced. I'm assuming there is a clicker, hopefully. Yeah, okay, very good, excellent. I like to move around because that makes my brain work better. And, ma'am, I got it. Is that the click? Excellent. Thank you. So when you look at India, they used to say population is a bad thing, but I think population is a great thing. The question is how you manage them, how you empower them. So we are first place in terms of a very young nation, and the target of a $7 trillion economy by 2025. And we are indeed the largest mobile data usage that we talked about. Now, I just wanted to give you a perspective on some of the 2017 trends. If you look at it, the next big wave is actually about enhanced intelligence. What does that mean? It is not just about programmability of the network. It's a combination of cloud, AI, machine learning, and some call it automation, but I think it's a level of orchestration from an end-to-end perspective. The other is always connected. Today, we connect. In fact, even in LTE, just so that you know, there is the idle mode operations for the geeks who are in the room. But in 5G, there is nothing called idle mode. It's connected. So that is the always connected. The voice and vision, you know, between AR, VR, visual graphics, natural language processing, natural language understanding, I think the way that we are going to do business is changing. Think about the computing power. Apple just launched his iPhone 10. That's a Bionic chip, A11. You look at Qualcomm Snapdragon 845. All of these have boat's load, if I use that term, of horsepower and chip power and processing power embedded in it. Cryptocurrency and blockchain. You know, I'm a very big believer in cryptocurrency. And in fact, cryptocurrency and a lot of siblings of cryptocurrency. Now, I'm also a believer that it needs to have the right type of regulatory framework, simplified regulatory framework, so that there is no money laundering. I think that's also important. Security and integrity. Security, privacy, integrity of data. And this is one that I am a big believer of, and I am very much involved in globally in terms of from a security perspective, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So what are some of the transformative technology and opportunity that is going to make the big shift in India? When you think about it, there is the cryptocurrency that we talked about. There is the enhanced virtual learning and e-learning that can be enabled from as far as India is concerned. There is the e-health, including the portable diagnostic tools. I met recently a 7th grader who is building a biomedical device for India for less than $22, $25 that can diagnose diabetics. It's an amazing device. I mean, these are youngsters who are building $25 devices in India, and that's unbelievable, and that's what we need to encourage. And smart city technology, agricultural technology. We are in the end an agrarian economy, right, as a nation, and it is very important for us to leverage technology to actually benefit the farming community, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You know, hopefully my 4G speed and the 2G speed will align in a minute. The transformative ecosystem, you know, it is not just about connectivity, and that's what I want to talk to you about. That is, it's about an integration of people, process, data, and things. And what does all of this take us through? This takes us to what I'm calling the human 2.0. The human 2.0, just imagine how many times do we look at our phone per day, per minute? If the phone is not there while you're driving, we got a problem. If the phone is not there while we are having dinner, we got a problem. It's because that's become an extension of ourselves. That's the extension of the CPU. That is the extension of the storage. And that, to me, is the power of technology. But it's also important to make sure we have some, what do they say? Even honey too much in abundance is not good. So we need to make sure that we balance everything. One of the biggest challenges of my life is work-life balance. And all of us need to have work-life balance. And I debate this every day, because 17 hours, 18 hours is what I work, and you guys would be thinking, how is that even possible? But it is possible. Whether in the shower, whether wherever, we're still working. And that is why it's possible. And that's not a good thing, because elevating the human experience also needs to have associated with the behavioral experience, cultural experience, and the societal experience that is required. And that's how you blend it. And no culture is more stronger to support that anywhere else in the world, in my humble opinion, than the culture that we have in India. Now, the past 12 months and the past week has been dramatic for India. And we've heard this many a times, but I just wanted to reiterate those points. That is freedom for voice and data for all. And we are not, as a nation or as an industry, shouldn't be, a prisoner to any technology, right? The good thing is we are no longer a prisoner. And the good thing is we have unleashed mobile broadband for all. Now, I think Mukesh Bhai in his last meeting at the inaugural session talked about us driving the Industrial Revolution 4.0. And the Industrial Revolution 4.0 is absolutely a great opportunity for us as India to take leadership, especially beyond just being in the IT business, right? How do we reskill the beyond IT folks in our country? I think artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, and the opportunities that come with it across industries and solving problems that are relevant to us in India. Now, service providers. This has been a challenge for us, especially in India. What is that challenge? I sincerely do not believe that the competition is between a Bharati, a Vodafone, an Idea, a Reliance Jio. No. I think the competition that we have at the service provider fraternity is the emerging OTT player who moves very fast, whether it is from a DevOps model and very efficient, from a product innovation standpoint, and also from a security, automation, orchestration, etc. All driving, like I said earlier, from a programmability standpoint, operational efficiency, capital efficiency. So it's a very important criteria for service providers to consider for its success. Now, the new operating model for service providers. If you look at the new operating model, consumers are driving the market. Consumers demand enhanced and advanced services from us. And on top of that, the type of devices that consumers use and the type of applications and services that consumers use puts tremendous pressure and strain. Whether it's our core network, whether it's our access network, whether it's our services platform, or even a small thing called an MME on our network. So it's extremely important for us to have the right scale. Business models for us to adapt. There are perceptions and perspectives in business models saying that, how low can you go? And my opinion, it can be as low as 0. And why is that? Because we know when we compete against our OTT friends, our emerging service provider friends, there are many services that are delivered today that you take it for granted, I take it for granted, each one of us take it for granted because it is at 0. But they have an alternative business model that they work on. The value creation, advertisement related, and it's not just subscription related. That's the business model enhancement that we, as the operator fraternity, need to think through. We've been talking about collaboration among operators the last couple of days, and I want to reinforce the need to collaborate further. We have now agreed to have 4G and LTE. Why would we ever translate from one technology to the other multiple times before handing it over to another operator? That inefficiency, from an operational perspective as well, it is not just about that interconnect. Think about the number of boxes. Think about the number of amount of utility that you need to put in. The power. Power is not cheap. Welcome to Mumbai. Welcome to Delhi. Why would we create these inefficiencies? I think the opportunity for us to improvise, both at the technology, operational, and the business level, and collaborate to win in this market together and to deliver on this market together is absolutely there. And I'm very optimistic we are on the right path. Now, how do we get to make sure that we win? To win, we need to do an end-to-end ecosystem drive of cost model. In fact, our chairman is also our chief product officer. It's a good thing and a bad thing, if you ask me. The best thing that happens is he drives us insane in terms of every bit, every byte, every cent, every paise. Between him and we call our chief execution officer, not the executive officer, Mr. Manoj Modi, between the two of them, they drill down on these two aspects extensively to ensure that the cost of doing business is the lowest. Why is that? Because we want to deliver the best experience using the best technology and the highest value to every industry and every Indian and every individual. That's our vision for India 2.0. And the building blocks of India 2.0, if you look at it very quick, 5G and FTTX. And I'm a big believer of FTTX. I think it's imperative that we do FTTX. That is, whether it's FTTH, whether it is FTTB, whether it is FTTP, because for lack of a broadband wireline infrastructure, we have adopted mobile first. That doesn't mean we won't adopt FTTH. Give us the capabilities of broadband to business. It is not just that. The in-hand is the only hand of convergence. There is convergence at home. You know, you have a home gateway that can do tremendous things from media hubbing to IoT hubbing, etc. The enterprise, it is not just about several pipes. You want an internet pipe, you want a VPN pipe, you want a cloud pipe. It can all be one pipe. And it should be one pipe. That doesn't mean when one pipe fails, everything fails. No, you have diversity and service streaming and service reliability and availability metrics that you can put in. So the building blocks is 5G and FTTX, IoT, machine learning, AI, the digital stack 2.0. I think that's a very important one. It is not about 1.0, it's about 2.0. It is not just about delivering the Aadhaar, the digital payments / BEAM, the GST framework. We should also have what I call as infrastructure as a stack, platform as a stack, software as a stack. That's our digital 2.0, so that our data resides in India. The privacy and the security of our nation and every individual is our responsibility. We do not need anybody else from anywhere else to come tell us how to do that. I think we are smart enough, and we should have the infrastructure, and we should have the mechanism to do that. Cryptocurrency, like I said, I'm an extremely big believer in cryptocurrency, and I continue to believe that we can create the ecosystem in India. And of course, cybersecurity, we will talk about that in a minute. 5G, a paradigm shift. I'll go through this very quickly in the interest of time. 1, 2, 3G, 3G, 4G, 5G. And by the way, 5G, in my opinion, is not just another G. It is a framework of capabilities. When I say a framework of capabilities, it is about automation and programmability of the network. 5G is not a technology. I think people look at 5G and say, it is better than 4G. It is way better than 4G from a network technology systems and business model. That's why I call it a framework and a paradigm shift, because it's about cloudification. It is about new spectrum bands, whether it is spectrum bands at 3.5 or less than 6 gigahertz, whether it's spectrum bands at the millimeter wave, whether it's spectrum bands at the 24 gigahertz, 28 gigahertz, 39 gigahertz, or whether it's a V band of 60 gigahertz, a E band of 70 gigahertz. All of these are part of 5G, and it is very important for us to make those spectrum allocations the right way the first time. Second is advanced radio multi-massive MIMO. That's very good. And of course, mobile edge computing, and we will talk about that also in a minute. So what we are looking at is Internet of Things is really driving the real architecture of how networks have been built. That is awesome. One button can do magic. Data, the new oil, I think Mukesh Bhai also talked about that. It's an extremely big opportunity for us with all the data that we are creating. The question is, how do you harness it? How do you protect the individual for it? And how do you give the best and the highest value to the individual to it? Now, cybersecurity. This is one topic that is very close to my heart. If you look at it, 70%, maybe even more, of the IoT devices still needs encrypted communication. We know of an interesting story actually happened in Seattle. You know, there was an Alexa device that was sitting in someone's home. And this Alexa device, in a home, you know, a lot of things happen. And we keep it at home. This family was having a challenge at home. So one of the members of the family was about to take a gun and shoot the other partner. Alexa recognized the situation and called 911. Now, obviously that saved the person, but now that also looks at the security and the privacy of what happens at home. Welcome to the world of IoT. Now, you look at the 1.9 billion data records, you look at the 143 million of the 300 million individuals in India, in the US, where Equifax put the data out. That is the most personal and private data that got breached. And it took them 6 weeks to say that there was a breach. And I'm not mentioning many governments and many other enterprises who have had similar issues. A lot of them have not come in the public domain yet. I love bees. By the way, my mother and I, nowadays, the last 25, 28 years, I've not had a hobby. My hobby is working. And Mr. Alexander, Steve and I know very well this hobby. But when I was a kid in high school, I had, again, the pleasure of having beehives at home. And I'm a big believer of bees. In fact, I've had beer created out of bees, just to let you know. And the queen bee and the bees are a very interesting set of individuals in that beehive. They have what I call as before, during, and after attack strategies. And the beehives, people who know bees, there are the drones, the worker bees, and the worker bees are aligned in multi-layers. What we need in India, what we need as an enterprise, is a multi-layer framework of security. And if there is a threat, how do you isolate that threat very quickly? How do you black hole that threat? And that's what bees do. Bees get attacked every day for honey because honey is very sweet and we all know that. And bees get attacked because another colony wants to use that hive. And I think just the same way, when we were flying, making airplanes, we learned a lot about birds, security. A lot to learn, in my opinion, from bees. Hence, the queen bee, the core assets, assets of our nation, assets of our enterprise, very important. In fact, early this year, the pacemaker of one of the most powerful men in the world was potentially hacked. That's the world we live in. But the opportunities are endless. Societal transformation. To me, we as a society have unbelievable opportunity across healthcare, agriculture, education, life, and services. And I talked about it, and I'm not going to repeat a few of this. You guys are very familiar with this. But I do want to talk about, as part of that societal transformation, the need for fiber to the curb, fiber to the home, fiber to the building. Because 5G and fiber have tremendous opportunity to coexist, collaborate, complement, supplement. Because 5G in the millimeter wave, a very short haul. Think about 5G as the friend haul or back haul or last mile or first mile. That means if you have a business in a Faluka and you don't have the last mile connectivity or the first mile connectivity, and you have an NOFN fiber or a Geo fiber or an Airtel fiber, you can have the last mile taken care of by 5G and then connecting, hopping back onto the FTTX network. And that can only happen if you build fiber infrastructure. And this fiber infrastructure is needed for our towers. Fiber infrastructure is needed for the enterprise. So wireline connectivity is an extremely important element for broadbanding India. Now, this to me is very important and close to my heart. We are all familiar with the standard PCO in our old lives. The PCO, the Public Call Office, to me, to realize the dream of India, to realize the dream of every individual at each taluka, we have a great opportunity to have a plug-and-play digital connectivity and services platform installed at each taluka. Think about it. It's a few laptops, few desktops, maybe 200 square feet, maybe 1,000 square feet, based on whatever that business wants to do. You can have cookie cutter. It's like McDonald's of digital India transformation. It's a cookie cutter mechanism, right? And what happens is, at this digital India transformation center, it can deliver e-healthcare, it can deliver e-education, it can deliver e-governance, and it can even deliver beyond e-healthcare. With diagnostic tools, a lot of primary healthcare capabilities can be done. And imagine now the next 100 meters associated with that 200 meters of the digital platform's footprint is a 3D printing space. And associated to the next door is a 200 square foot AR/VR studio. We in India have too much content that gets created at the local level. The YouTube of local India. We have the power of creating not just employment and empowerment. We have the ability to create innovation at the taluka level with this, the new PCO, the digital PCO. And I want to leave one other thought with you. Everybody has been deliberating, do we need LTE or not? LTE to me is learn to earn. It's not just a technology. I think it's a big paradigm shift that will happen. This learn to earn technology will enable the digital empowerment and the digital enablement across India. And what that delivers is an inclusive and secure digital India. And when you think about it, the collaboration among the operators, the New India digital stack, the cybersecurity, and the programs that we have as India, whether it is the Digital India program, the Make in India program, the Startup India program, all of these together, along with the new digital PCO at the taluka level, we have a unique opportunity in what I term a grassroots digital movement, the Panchayati Raj of the digital age at the taluka level, for employment, for entrepreneurship, and for innovation. And that's the endless possibilities that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I always say that anybody who calls Mr. Ambani Mukesh Bhai needs to be listened to very carefully. So thank you very much for your insights and for your inputs over here. Some real good key inputs to consider in terms of where we're headed. So thank you very much. So let me just call up Sumit Arora. Before I do that, Sumit, let me just give people a background. People are not used to it. I mean, they know our CMD of BSNL. They know Matthew now from here, but you're a new person, at least for many of us. So let me just give a quick background. Sumit is a Senior Vice President at Cisco Systems, and he's based in Silicon Valley. And at Cisco headquarters, he heads the service provider network systems business globally for Cisco, with annual revenue of $3 billion. In easier terms, he is responsible for innovation, development, and build-out of global internet infrastructure. He's passionate about India growth and economic development and strives to cultivate actively the vision of Digital India. So, Sumit, please take us through and be mindful of the time constraints that we have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rajan. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And a good day to everyone. I think Matthew gave a lot of wonderful insights today, and I hope to give you a perspective that we see, or I see, on this revolution that is underway. I want to thank Rajan for giving me this opportunity today. I think there is no question that there is a big change that is underway here in India. There is no doubt about that. And if we look at the Digital India initiative from the government, I think it is really apt to thank and congratulate the government officials, the execution team, the minister, as well as everyone in India on the tremendous progress that is being made. And while I say that, I think I want to share something that is often said, and I really believe it. While you can remove an Indian from India, you cannot remove India from an Indian, right? So, and that is totally applicable to me. So when I see these numbers, all right. So when I see these numbers on the trend that is underway, it just touches my heart. Yes, 400 million plus internet users in the country. That's going to double to more than 800 million over the next 4 years. Massive amounts of connections, new devices coming on board, huge amounts of broadband data consumption, lots of video. Yes, the numbers are beautiful, right? There is a lot to be proud of. But behind these numbers, what makes it really special is the impact. The impact on job creation, the impact on growth, the impact on the standard of living for everyone, and most importantly, the social and economic empowerment. I was just reading a lot of statistics, and the one that really touched me is that every second, 3 Indians experience the internet for the very first time. And like Matthew said, that means a lot to a farmer, to a student, in terms of equalization of opportunity, because information is king, it's power. Now, let me provide a global perspective today on what this big digital revolution or digitization means. Because while India is unique, while India is really at the forefront, and this is truly a revolution here, the forces of digitization are happening across the globe. So what enables digitization? And I want to highlight three main factors on that front. First is high quality and secure infrastructure. That's a big enabler. Second is sustainable business models. And the third is the ease of doing business with a policy framework that is robust. These three enabling factors are absolutely critical for digitization and digitization acceleration anywhere in the world. That's a global viewpoint. But there are challenges. Many of these challenges are global in nature, but in India, there are some unique characteristics. Let me share some of those challenges with you. Clearly, when it comes to infrastructure itself, a lot more needs to be done for quality of service, for security. I think Matthew mentioned a lot of the breaches, for customer experience, customer retention. There are issues, and we need to solve them. But we need to solve them in the background of that sustainable business model. And look at this. Worldwide, globally, the average revenue per user is flatlining to declining. And in that environment, we need to deliver massive bandwidth increases. We need to operate the networks, and many of them have complexity that has been acquired over the years through multiple generations of technologies. And if I were to look at my SP customers, because I come from Cisco, and we obviously are a partner to them, clearly OpEx. The typical OpEx to CapEx ratio worldwide is 4 to 5x. So we spend 4 to 5x more on OpEx than CapEx. Now in India, it's a little smaller, but the bigger challenge is you cannot operate networks of this scale and this complexity and meet all those expectations without automation, without a new paradigm of operations. So these are the challenges that we see globally. However, in India, there are three factors that make it special, and as an engineer, actually make it exciting. First is the speed of transformation. The growth in internet access in India is in thousands of percentage ranges over the last 10 years, and it's going to continue at a very massive rate. The scale, the geographic density, and the number of people and devices that are going to come online is unprecedented on the planet. And the economics are completely different from anything else that you see in the developed world. So this cost, the economics, the speed, and the scale are so unique to India that conventional tactics, conventional work does not fly. You need unconventional, non-linear innovation to succeed and deliver this in India. And that's the key message. So, let me talk a little bit about Cisco. Clearly, we consider ourselves fortunate and honored to be in the middle of this journey across the world. And we are engaged with governments, with enterprises, with SPs, and with cities, to be candid, with people, citizens, to achieve this transformation. But I will double-click a little bit on the service provider piece of Cisco's strategy, even though we have a broader playbook and strategy and offerings for that entire sector. We want to help our service provider customers with innovations, products, services that enable mass-scale networking. While this is a global strategy for Cisco, I want you to know that I say this with pride, that India is at the center of driving that mass-scale word there, because it's so applicable to India. Automation, as I said, it's not just about being able to deploy lots of people, lots of human power to run networks. The reality is, even then, it will fail. So automation and orchestration, like Matthew mentioned, is a big area of strategic investment for us. And then we want, while the upper two blocks, the mass scale networking and the automation work, help SPs build that secure, that amazing infrastructure in a cost-efficient way, help them operate it. We also need to enable new business models, and that's where our work, our strategy is to enable business to business and business to consumer offerings for our SPs so that we can derive revenue and deliver services, video services, security services, internet services, or even enterprise services. But the key point that I want to make is this serves the strategic imperative for all of us. If you look at the top strategic imperatives for SPs today, it's around network upgrades, 3G, 4G, 5G, VoLTE, right? And these are frameworks, these are big technology transitions. It is around digitization. The SPs need to digitize themselves. The touch point with our customers and consumers need to be different, need to be more automated, need to be more instant, need to be speedy. So digitization is a big one. And the strategic identity, because what you see around the world is SPs moving to banking, to content. So the strategic identity is important, and our strategy serves to support that. Let me double click from global strategy down to India. As I said, as an engineer, when you see speed and scale and economics offered by India, you come to a conclusion that if you can innovate and make something work in India, it'll work anywhere in the world. That is the reality. So this is an exciting moment, a moment full of pride. And from Cisco's perspective, our relationship with India reflects that. It is a 360 relationship. India is not a country we do business in. India and Cisco have shared values. We are on a shared journey. And that's why we are excited and very aligned to the government's initiatives around Skill India, Startup India, Digital India, and Make in India. That is why, while we may talk about $1.4 billion in investment, or $280 million in investments in startups or 25 different companies in India, the bigger thing is we are actually using our expertise and mentoring and grooming startups and helping them bring products and markets to the products and solutions to the market. And that's how we support Startup India. Our network academies have helped train 160,000 students to contribute to the digital economy. And our goal is 250,000 more over the next 3 years. These things, I'm not trying to sell Cisco here, by the way, but these things have a real meaning to helping achieve the objectives that we have for our citizens here, right? Our collaboration with universities, our digital classrooms effort enables that information, that digital economy participation by a larger workforce. Clearly, we have started manufacturing in India. That's a big deal to support the Make in India. But most importantly, I'm super excited about what we are doing for digitization acceleration. 52 projects in 6 different states, many projects with enterprises. So government, cities, and companies, we are working together to speed up digitization. And our R&D work, I'm an engineer. I grew up in India, studied here, and our R&D work in India is second to none. This is the largest R&D site outside of Silicon Valley for the company. 1,600 plus global patents. Every week we get 2 new global patents delivered out of India. And 12 products have been conceptualized, designed, developed in India, launched globally. In fact, some of the biggest data centers in the world connect through products built right out of India. Now, this investment has to have a meaning in terms of results. And I'm extremely excited to share with you some of our partnerships. Safety, safe cities. We're working with Lucknow, Navi Mumbai, and Pune on safe cities. Working with Jaipur on the smart city project. Working with Andhra Pradesh on delivering the lowest cost internet access in the world. And we have been a big partner to our SP community. Some of the results that we have seen recently, 100 million new broadband consumers in the last 6 months, rapid progress. We are fortunate to be a partner and part of that. And we're working globally with, many of the enterprise, the banks, to digitize and to automate and to deliver better services. So clearly a lot of investment and a lot of initiative. But let me summarize my thought process with you on where the path forward is. As I shared with you, there is a big digital revolution underway. We all know that. The digitization enablers, the 3 enablers, are getting in place, especially because of government policies. I think Matthew alluded to it. We totally agree. And we understand the challenges from a global perspective as well as from an India perspective and the opportunities for innovation that come out of India. I believe it's time to scale India. And by scale India, I mean Scale India, of course, that's an initiative. And we will be the partners through our network academies, through our collaboration with universities. It is about creating in India and innovating in India because, as I said, the unique non-linear innovation opportunities offered by India, selfishly speaking, you build anything here and operationalize it here, it will work anywhere and succeed anywhere on this planet, no question. Accelerate growth, accelerate the improvement in the standard of living here, accelerate this whole transformation. And lead globally. The most important thing is the stuff, the business models, the products, the services that we create in India, we can lead with them globally. And most importantly, doing it together through an ecosystem of government, of service providers, of enterprises, of companies like Cisco and Ciena and others all working together so that we can focus on the broader mission. Because the broader mission is very appealing. The broader mission is about improved standards of living. It's about social and economic empowerment. And it's about seeing an India which is at the forefront of leadership in the world, which gives that path forward. So really excited, really proud to be part of this journey. On behalf of Cisco, I want to thank you all for your partnership. We are here, very committed, and looking forward to the journey together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit. And again, thank you for your support of IMC as well, along with our friends who are on this panel, who have actively supported this initiative. And so we really appreciate that. And sharing with us, John Chambers is a frequent visitor of India. He's a great admirer of Mr. Modi, our Honorable Prime Minister. And again, thank you. You know, they talk about Indians in the U.S., as coconuts, brown on the outside, white on the inside. It's good that you're still brown and brown, yeah? So, so thank you for coming over here. We now have the pleasure of having Mr. Anupam Srivastava, who is the Chairman and Managing Director of BSNL. Anupam, after starting working in India, I've had a new appreciation for BSNL and for all these fine gentlemen who work in this industry at BSNL. Having to compete with one hand tied behind your back is bad enough. Having both hands tied behind your back is challenging, all right, in terms of acquisition of what they call L1. By the time you go through the L1, the industry has moved a couple of years. And then after you get L1, there's somebody challenging you in court, and that's another couple of years. So it's really tough to be able to compete. But yet, what you've really been able to do, especially under your tenure, and I really take my hats off, it really changed that sort of vector. And again, you really need to acknowledge this. And all of these folks from BSNL, they have an unenviable task competing with folks who don't have the same constraints that this fine gentleman operates under. And again, Anupam, I have the greatest respect for you. Please tell us how you do it at BSNL. Thank you.
My both hands are open. They are not tied. Distinguished guests on the dais, press and media, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, let me congratulate organizers of IMC for this event. Special congratulations to Mr. Matthews. We all go to Barcelona and Shanghai and always dreamt that why can't the similar event happen here? Our dreams are reality now. And you succeeded in not only to converge mobile, telecom, internet, but also Sunil Bhai, Mukesh Bhai, and I mentioned by Bhai, so you be better serious. Government, private, and PSUs. The event started with keynote address of MDA, SBM, and ending with BSNL. I think Rajan knows, no matter how big the digital divide is, it is only BSNL that can bridge it at the end. Talking of digital divide, three things comes to my mind. International digital divide, intra-national digital divide, and intergenerational digital divide. Whilst the international digital divide in respect of India is taken care of mostly by the private players, Jio, Airtel, etc., and BSNL as well, as someone mentioned in the beginning, that India has already jumped from 1/50th in the data consumption to a #1 position. We can say now proudly that international digital divide is almost bridged in respect of our country. The intra-national digital divide is mostly addressed by government and BSNL, and on which I'll come in a short while. But what concerns me most, Mr. Rajan, is intergenerational digital divide. The digital divide between baby boomers generation and millennia generation. Technology is growing at a significant rate. Many companies are moving their activities onto internet, and new businesses are being developed that operate purely on the internet. There is a significant divide between the older and younger generation, especially in respect to technological understanding. I was told once in a very remote and far-flung country, maybe African country or somewhere else, someone told the minister that, do you know, in your country, huge digital divide exists. Next day in his speech, he said that government is aware of digital divide and immediately ordered construction of a bridge with a span of 20 numbers. So generations are becoming illiterate during their lifetime, as the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. It is our duty to make them literate again. We have to make them digitally aware again. And Government of India's Skill India plan is very timely step in the right direction. In fact, I remember my father, he retired from the government service, and then as he has done law, he entered into practicing, and he practiced till the age of about 82, and then he fell sick. And he didn't know about the new technology and all that. He was in stress. His health was deteriorating. It was going down. And we introduced him and his family member to digital technology, to WhatsApp, to Facebook. And today, he can, together with his family member, chat on WhatsApp at the age of 86, talk on Facebook, send the videos and the images to the friends, write big philosophical paragraphs, and enjoy. And his stress level has gone down. His health has improved. So that's the beauty of making people digitally learn it again. Now, talking of intra-national digital divide, which is the most important parameter of assessing societal development of our country, and parameter for the extent to which the residents have an access to the information and communication technology through the internet. Conventionally, the definition of digital divide entails those who have an access to the internet and those who do not have. But I would rather add another dimension to this conventional definition of digital divide in the context of India and say it is the inequality between those who have more and those who have less bandwidth. Before I come to what BSNL is doing to bridge this gap, let me tell you why bridging the digital gap is vital. This is required for removing economic inequality, making efficient the government programs, social mobility in the children in the lower socioeconomic status, healthier democracy, and economic growth. By one report, in urban India, almost 60% are using internet, and in contrast in rural India, only 17% internet users are there. As per one estimate, approximately there are 750 million users in rural India who are yet to become internet users or broadband users. This situation in India is rapidly changing with the flagship program of Government of India, which is Digital India, launched by our Honorable Prime Minister in July 2015, where various ministries in general and Ministry of Communication, our ministry in particular, are working overtime to realize the goals of this ambitious program. This is aiming ICT penetration in the remotest part of our vast country. And it is said that by the end of 2020, almost like 730 million internet users, broadband users would be there. The growth rate and penetration of internet access has been fueled by TSPs like us, and the growth rate in access is one of the highest in the world. Indian telecom space is transforming like never before, and these transformations are affecting the way we live, the way we think, the way we do business, and I feel fortunate to live in these interesting times, and more importantly, I feel fortunate to work in this industry at this defining times. I have worked my entire life in telecom space and joined good old PNT, fixed line operator, almost 3 decades ago. Even in those days, we may not have coined the term digital divide, but at the same time, also we were mandated and we were clear in our approach of planning out telephone networks in a fashion so as to cater for urban as well as rural areas, so that the access to every nook and corner of the country can be provided for. Today, we have telephone exchanges in the remotest part of our country, and interestingly, the planning of those days is supplementing our efforts for providing fiber to each Gram Panchayat under another Government of India flagship program, BharatNet. You all know that in BharatNet, it is planned to connect 250,000 Gram Panchayats in the country through optical fiber network. In the phase 1, 1 lakh Gram Panchayats are already connected, and in that 85% job has been done by Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited. BSNL has 2 roles. One, On one hand, we are involved in providing retail telecom service to our esteemed customers throughout India under the acute competition with our hands tied, as Mr. Rajan Matthews mentioned. And on the other hand, we are shouldering responsibility in vital government projects of immense importance like left-wing extremist, LWE, BharatNet, Northeast connectivity, smart cities, and list goes on. You know, in left-wing extremist area, which is, there are 10 states are affected by Naxal movement, and in those areas, we have installed 2,000 BTS where no other operator had ever gone. The project is completed with connectivity to those areas with little bit of internet connection as well. Similarly, together with the support of Department of Telecommunication, we are also putting Wi-Fi hotspot in 25,000 those exchanges which we plan as PNT or DOT organization, which are already connected by optical fiber with internet and Wi-Fi connectivity. The project has already begun. High-speed data to our retail customer through mobile and landline broadband has seen multifold increase. Like Gio has mentioned that the throughput has increased multifold. Similarly, it has increased in all the networks. And BSNL also, it has increased by 6 times on a month-to-month basis. In many quarters, we have exceeded the industry growth as well. Wi-Fi offload, Wi-Fi broadband, and some of the unique initiatives taken successfully by BSNL. We have already introduced mobile wallet, beginning with MobiCash, then together with MobiQuick, then SpeedPay, and our mobile customers are using banking services on the move, and even the mobile customers who are having feature phone. Realizing fully that we have to provide high-speed mobile data connectivity for rural masses to take best advantages of digital revolution, we are planning our high-speed network keeping their needs in mind. We have already partnered with OEMs like Nokia, ZTE, Corient, and another technology partner for 5G. Lastly, last year was the year of transition, we all know. Many things happened that has launched India to a new digital age. It began with Reliance Jio coming to the market, demonetization, introduction of eCAF, and GST. And yes, the companies are challenged and now grappling with these changes. But as they say, when there are challenges, there are opportunities as well. BSNL is not only geared up to embrace these challenges and changes, but also take advantage out of it. With the series of measures taken by the Government of India and TSPs alike, the day is not far when the person is standing at the lowest step of the social ladder and living in the remotest part of our great nation will be able to understand and reap the benefit of government schemes, market opportunities, open resources, or could simply enjoy a new game launched recently at exactly the same time as that of the countrymen sitting in Delhi. And yes, side by side, education and skilling is still required so that our children do not play blue whale, but engage in whale of development. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Anupam, thank you very much. Again, as I said, kudos to you and your team for the stellar work that's being done, especially in these last couple of years. And you're right, I mean, going to some of these areas, that's one of your USPs, right? Going where nobody else has gone in terms of commercial operators. And so we really appreciate that, and country does appreciate that too. One of the things that I have seen and heard often enough as I go through parts of this great land of ours is when we talk about operators, the one operator that everybody trusts, every consumer trusts, is BSNL. So thank you again, Anupam, for participating. With that, let me move over to Steve. Steve, do come and tell us what is going on in the world of Ciena as Chief Technology Officer. I'm sure you have great insights into what's going on. Thank you.
for the, got this gone? So thank you for the invitation. I think it's great that we've brought Mobile World to India, and it's a privilege for me to be here. When
Try
saw
this, I think.
topic-
Is this? Hello? Yeah.
So it's a privilege for me to be here. When I saw this topic, right, networks that connect the next billion, I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to talk about how networks need to scale and the opportunities that you have when there is such abundance in the way that networks connect folks together and such. So what I wanted to do is talk through some of the key technology drivers. What is it that's driving the different businesses, and why are we thinking differently? Because there's such a huge opportunity now to just think differently about the role of the network, how you build it, and how you operate it. And I'm going to talk through first the piece that we would call kind of telco transformation. Because the single biggest kind of forcing function out there for us right now is a change in how we just think about building networks right from the ground up. When you look at historically how we built networks, and that's what's on the left side of this chart, we did it by laying down a transport infrastructure, and then we would populate that network with all sorts of different types of network appliances. Physical boxes, thousands and thousands and thousands of these things, all stitched together, all bolted on. And then each one of those would typically have an intelligent management system, software that would run it, maybe a network management system. And at some much higher level in the network, you'd be able to pull all that together through an OSS BSS capability, and that's when you could first really define a service. And the IT world and the telco world are absolutely converging. Right? The way that the networks operate is you would typically buy a piece of equipment, you'd put it through a software transformation in your IT department, and that would turn into something you could take out to the marketplace and sell. Well, IT and telco are coming together in a way that allows us to reimagine how that entire network gets built. And that's what's drawn over on the right-hand side. You're still going to have physical infrastructure, right? The place that Ciena plays in the network, for example, somebody has to create photons, put them on fibers, take them off at the other end, aggregate them together, all that. You have to have that kind of equipment, but lots and lots of the additional functionality, that's an opportunity to virtualize. So you're going to have network equipment that is both physical as well as virtual. And this is now where the role of analytics comes in, right? Analytics is information coming out of those physical and virtual elements. They come up out of the network, and they inform an orchestration or an automation layer. Right? We like the term orchestration because you think about all the things that go into a network. It's very similar to all the instruments in an orchestra. Right? They're built differently, they sound differently, you play them differently. But what are you after? You're after that symphony that comes when everything plays together correctly. That's your orchestration function. And the way you control all these physical and virtual network elements, that's through control, through software-defined networking techniques. If you look at that, all of a sudden you've got a closed loop. You have information coming up out of the network, going up into automation and orchestration, flowing back down into the network and informing the physical and virtual what to do. And that's just such a fundamental change in how we have built and operated networks. They've never been real time like this before. They've been kind of set and forget. You provision them, you monitor it. If it breaks, I'll come back and fix it. But there was never this real time capability. And that's absolutely critical for scale. To get to billions of things, you need that kind of automation in the network. And this whole world of analytics is really fascinating in the network space because when you look at how we have built networks for decades, we really only know two states in a network. It's either alarmed or it's not alarmed. And we make the assumption that if it's not alarmed, it's operating correctly. We don't actually know what normal operation in most networks is because we just don't watch it all. We just watch and think and see if things broken or not. So there's a huge role for analytics in terms of understanding what's normal in a network, because once I know what's normal, I can figure out what's abnormal. I can figure out, is it under attack? I can figure out, is it getting congested? I can figure out, is something very popular in a region and I need to put additional resources into that region? If all I'm doing is looking at alarms, all I know is it's broken or it's not. That's really just not enough information. So analytics in this new world we're building is critical. And it gives you an opportunity to just reimagine the whole business. Matthew talked earlier around, what's the real competition? Well, on the left-hand side of this picture, that's what we've done with networks for ages, right? We take a box, we put some software with it, right? We do a transformation on it, and I rent you or I sell you a port. That's your connection. Well, the new world wants more, right? If you really want to scale to address billions of things, you can start to envision taking the connect function that we typically associate with networks, but combining it with the compute and the store function, right? Connect and compute and store coming together to build a better machine. And in fact, that's a platform. And what that platform does, if you're in the enterprise side, that's enabling businesses. Right? You can create entire businesses on top of a platform like that. If you're in the residential side, what do? You create, which is what Geo has done, a digital platform for life. Right? It's the physical connections, it's the device you can watch, it's the applications on top of it, but it's a lifetime platform. It's that platform concept that's so key. And so you can even reimagine the entire service provider. I'm not just giving you a connection, I'm enabling your business, or I'm giving you the digital platform for life. Right? Just a whole different model of what the business looks like. And if you think about what have the web scale folks done really, really well, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons and Microsofts, what have they done? They've learned to monetize what people would say is abundance. What have carriers typically done? They monetize scarcity. I'm the only one who has that connection, so you have to pay me a lot of money for it. Right? That's the typical model. The abundance model isn't like that. It says, I'm going to give you connectivity, I'm going to give you a platform, I'm going to set you free, let you do what you want, I'm going to monetize that abundance. It's a whole different business model. And along with this comes an opportunity to reimagine the entire network infrastructure. Right? This, in many cases, people call this CORD, Central Office Reimagined as a Data Center. Right? We built central offices for decades, populate them with all sorts of high availability equipment. Well, all those central offices, a lot of that functionality gets virtualized. You might as well be running it into a data center. In fact, as you saw earlier, for this network that we're building to connect to billions of things, billions of that we really never had. And there are people who doubt what's going to happen, obviously. But if you said, look, just take a look at what people will be able to do, the wearables technology model, and think about the number of sensors that exist today in the handheld devices, right? The first iPhone, 5 or 6 sensors, now up to over a dozen sensors just in the device. And here we have the ability to start to do electronic health, telemedicine, telesports, monitor what's going on. And remember, that same model of the network where we really want to know whether it's broken or not, that kind of applies to how people are treated today. Well, if you're not sick, you must be well. It's kind of a binary choice. We don't really have analog parameters that come back and tell you what's going on. Are things degrading? Are things changing? And that's really what we'd like. Well, that's the opportunity that we get with wearables. Right? So that's going to drive a tremendous increase in demand into the networks. And the 5G promise, and Matthew talked about this, extreme mobile broadband, connectivity everywhere, massive machine-type interconnections, ultra-reliable, right? The way you get to ultra-reliable is lots and lots of diversity of connections. It's not just one connection that I'm going to monitor anymore. It's multiple types of connections over multiple generations of technology to multiple physical locations, so that if any one of them fails, I still have that connection back into the network. That's a critical piece of how you get to high availability, ultra reliability networks. So another key piece to this is the introduction of intelligence, automation, control, software. And software often scares people. And I really make the case that I can put lots and lots of additional software into the network to kind of reduce that complexity. You know, here's an example of how autonomics and intelligence, machine learning, if you will, right, can apply to almost any system. Well, that bottom blue box, that can be the network, where you're watching what happens, you observe what goes on, you have context about where you are, how you react if you're in a car may be different than how you react if you're in a building to the same sort of stimulus. But you play all this through, and you have it well-defined through a bunch of programming interfaces. And all of a sudden now you can distribute the system and you can start to see about autonomous systems, having a network respond automatically. And again, that scares some people. They say, I'm never going to let the network be autonomous. But I would challenge that thinking and say, well, we do that today with protection. We allow for automatic protection switching and we allow for automatic restoration. The reason is because the signature is so clear. So we have to put in place the mechanisms through intelligence, through machine learning, to make the signatures just as clear when we want the network to respond to an attack, through a hack, through a denial of service. Anytime we want the network to adapt, we need a clear signature, and again, that gets you back to the analytics piece. And you can start to build now a stack of these functions. This is what we call the end state ambition. How do we get to the final state of the network? What functionality is needed? Where do the APIs exist? And you focus on the APIs, not necessarily behavior. Don't specify what you want it to do specifically. You specify how it wants to communicate. Don't over-specify and you'll actually get a better result at the end of the day. And what you can do with this, of course, and then now you can start to distribute it out. You can say, I have converted my central offices into data centers. I can start to put these stacks out into these central offices. I can start to automate the network. I can start to learn about how the network behaves. I can get my analytics out. I can understand what's normal. I know where congestion is. I know how to respond to it. I can start to automate the entire experience. And if you look at how that plays out physically, right, we provide the equipment that we sell lots and lots of connectivity, an abundance of connectivity, which is exactly what you want to kind of have the foundation for all this. And then you want to be able to source it through all the different types of assets, technologies, whether it be fiber, whether it be point-to-point microwave, whether it be standard cell technologies, to bring that into a very richly connected fabric and think of it that way as a fabric kind of approach. And we can take these ideas and go right back into the international standards. And these ideas around programming interfaces are going to be key. Specify how you want the different pieces of the network to talk to each other. If you're bringing connect and compute and store together, specify how you want those individuals to talk. Don't specify exactly what they have to do, because you want that creativity out there in the open. But specify how they talk to each other. are worried about the software nature of this. And when you say, especially to a hardware-centric networking environment, you're going to solve complexity with software, people get skeptical. But I would also tell you, let's look at our own experience with smartphones, with tablets, what we're able to do. Do you remember what feature phones were like? Right? They would typically come with a manual, maybe 3/4 of an inch thick, some of them. Most people didn't know all the features that their phone could do. As we moved to intelligent devices, as we went to ones that were command-driven, you could easily scroll through, you can have a touch screen. What happened? People don't even need the manuals now, they can self-learn it. Right? We're able to hide all that complexity, tremendous improvements in complexity. We're able to hide it by doing a really good job on the user interface and the software. And the exact same thing has to happen here. We've got to be able to hide the complexity of scale and abundance in the network using software, well-defined interfaces. Then we can get to the point where people can use it and it becomes almost invisible, just like air. Right? You just breathe in the network, you breathe out the network, and even though it's there, it just happens. And in fact, you can say the network becomes the programmable platform. If you wanted to do something different, just as you would with a smart tablet, you drop an app on it and it turns into something else, the network should work the same way. Put an app on it, turns into video, put an app on it, turns into healthcare, put an app on it, turns into voting, put an app on it, turns into network intelligence. That entire connect, compute, and store ecosystem should just react that way. And that's the goal of these scalable, intelligent networks. That's the goal of creating this kind of abundance. And then you can start to slice the networks. You can say, I've got this programmable platform, I'm going to slice it up. I'm going to say, here's for video, here's for banking, here's for healthcare, here's for defense. But I have one common ubiquitous infrastructure, and I can take these assets and they're fungible across all those applications, and they can move and grow and change as necessary. I can slice them horizontally, right? Give everybody different kinds of capacity, different service attributes, but maybe even more importantly now in the Internet of Things, I can slice them vertically.
Sorry, Steve, maybe just interrupt.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think I only have two more. Here what happens, you want to be able to segment into things like edge compute, right? If you have short times, you want lots of rapid feedback, right? Instantaneous feedback, local processing. You cut it by how long the system has to propagate through the network. So if you look at just shaping the future, huge opportunities that runs from last mile all the way through. But the way I would sum this up is it's a collaboration. It's a collaboration between what we can do on the industrial side. It's a collaboration with happens to the government side, because they have to have a regulatory environment in place. They own the spectrum. They have to be able to make that available. And I would also tell you, academia has a big piece to this too, because they're going to bring a big piece of the human element to it as well, and now represent a lot of the forward looking. With the opportunities that are out there, and this is the last slide, I would tell you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not the strongest that's going to survive this. And you're in a place where it's an incredible amount of flux. The opportunities here, because of the abundance of youth, the abundance of interest, and the abundance of bandwidth, of connectivity, allows you to change everything, to change the entire society. But we want to just be responsive. We want to prepare the network and the infrastructure to be programmable, real-time, and responsive. With that,
Thanks, Steve. Sorry to have to push you a little bit over there. Matthew, you just ready with a quick statement, or that?
No, I just think it's a good thing to, as we close this out, to thank obviously all the panel members, but also thank the DOT Secretary, our Minister. I was told by COAI, one member last night, the Minister, our Honorable Minister, Mr. Manoj Sinha, is always available and always asks, how can I help? And where can I help? Same thing applies to Sri Ravishankar Sahib as well. So it was an effort of a lot of different people that made this happen. In all of that, I should say, one gentleman that has played a very anchor role is none other than Mr. Rajan Matthews. And I think we owe him a big applause. And I had
paid,
the
paid
pleasure.
advertisement from my fellow statesperson. Okay.
I had the pleasure, actually, not just to visit him, but also visit with his more efficient and lovely wife as well that he put on the job. I think she and the entire COAI team, who has been working as an anchor, along with Department of Telecom, I think requires a huge applause. Thank you very much, folks. And we want to make IMC the largest and the most innovative destination. This IMC should be the destination for any conference in India, and we are certain, Mr. Rajan, you will exceed those expectations. And thank you very much for, again, organizing this show.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and appreciate your support and the support of Reliance and all of our panel members. And again, thank you for participating. Our time's up. But very quickly, let me just guide you to the next sessions. Hall A, that's right here. We're going to be talking about analytics, something that has already been referred to by Steve and by the others, but that's going to continue here. Hall B is going to be talking about smart cities, smart governance, and Hall C, digital content enhancing user experience. That's going to start right away. Apologies, grab a cup of coffee and head into those particular halls. And thank you again for your patience and your participation. Again, Hall A, analytics. Hall B, we're talking about smart cities and smart governance. Hall C, digital content enhancing user experience. So again, thank you very much.
morning, everyone. I'll request everyone to please be seated. We are going to start our next session. I request everybody at the back to please be seated. We are going to start with the session. People at the back can move up in the front. We have vacant rows in the front for you. Thank you. We welcome all of you to this session on value creation through analytics, a $41 billion opportunity. As we all know, data analytics is a rapidly developing field. Big data analytics can significantly help the government to foster economy, combat fraud, bring transparency, and spike productivity and growth. This panel will throw light on the evolving opportunities of analytics and their applications in different sectors and the challenges they pose in terms of vulnerability of personal data, privacy, and national security. I'll now request Mr. Vishal Jain, partner Deloitte, to share his thoughts on this issue.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible? Okay. Hi, I think it's a very interesting topic, the data analytics, and we have talked about it's creating a $41 billion opportunity. So I'll start with a very interesting concept. I don't know how many of you know chaos theory? Anybody understand? Great, thank you, sir. So chaos theory, it really talks about that when in the random data generator and the pointers, you still over a long period of time or over a given period of time, you see a lot of patterns in that. And even then, if it is because of the randomization and other stuff, you can still derive certain patterns and you can predict something. And if you see it largely, it applies on the meteorological stuff and the weather condition and all that stuff. And so that's why if you see, there is a lot of predictability when we talk about weather, climatic condition, where the hurricane will move, how the rainfall will happen, and all that. So because the dynamic there is quite constant in terms of with the set way the entire universe works, so it's still there is a bit of predictability around there. But when we go with the same concept and we try to apply in our day-to-day life, so yesterday I was hearing some of the session, and they talked about complicated world and complex world. So what we believe, or my personal belief is that we are in a complicated, complex world. Now the complex part comes here is that there is an interaction between man and machine, there is an interaction between machine to machine, and there is an interaction between man to man. And interestingly, all these communications are influencing each other. And I'll tell you how it happens. So if I take an example of, say, a luxury car or any car, when you move around and they keep capturing your data in terms of where all you have gone, what shops you have gone, which mall you have gone, all that. And then you it communicates back to the, you can say the AI system of the car manufacturer. With the data goes back to the different other stakeholders, and then they come out with, say, suppose if I again crossing that mall, and then they say, okay, this is the product which is there, this is the offer which is going on, do you want to buy or not? So there is a machine to machine which happened, and then machine to man which happened. So then the data, my data is coming back to me and saying that this is the offer you want to do. It's a very customized service offering coming. After that, it's left to me to decide whether I really want to buy that or not, or avail that offer. Now there, before taking the decision, I really consult other people. And sometimes we post to the, say, social media and saying, I want to buy this phone, which is the best phone, which is the best car, which is what's happening around. So there is a man-to-man communication happening as well. And so we are not totally so confident that even if this offering or products which are sent, somebody will make a decision out of it. So that's a very complicated, and the complex part is here that we have number of systems, whether it's a people, process, technology, everything coming here. So that's where we are. And in last, I would say 2.5 days, what we have seen, that's enough infrastructure being created. We talk about 5G, various technologies, IoT, all the big players here, and they all talk about the touch points and data being generated. So we have seen how the entire data-driven stuff which is happening. So now it's no more, earlier days we used to have a research or a survey by a research company. They will identify a target segment, fill up the form and saying, what do you want to have, what product? Then they will go back to the company and then they will talk about, okay, this is what I should develop as a product. And then they will develop the product, send it back to the market, customer will buy, they will go back and see the feedback from the customer, how the product is doing. Now that entire timeline and life cycle has now reduced. We have enough data around social media, we have various other places where we registered. When we go to a mall, you are a lucky winner, can you share a mobile number? Okay, can you do this survey? All those stuff which happens, and we are unknowingly sharing our data at various places. This data being monetized, obviously in a boundary regulated manner, and then we get, as a corporate, if we say the company, we get how the target going to look at. And when we give back the services and define the product and the services, immediately from the social media analysis or the way the behavior pattern is, we get to know the feedback of how my product is doing. So all the stuff which you used to do earlier has gone on almost in a very real time or a very short span of time. And that's all is powered by the entire data-driven offering and data sort of exercise. So we see the way, we have been listening for last 2 days, the data, there are multiple touch points. So earlier we used to say, information at your fingertips. It was like a saying, but today it's true that information is actually at your fingertips. So when you move, when you talk, when you browse, when you buy, when you make a transaction, every behavior of your touch point, there is a point where data is being collected and it's being generated, which can be evaluated and analyzed. The important part here is how are we analyzing the data? Now, before I go into the entire analytics ecosystem, where we are relying on the data which is coming from the entire technology ecosystem, we should talk about, in the Indian scenario, we see a very different type of, you can say, variation in terms of culture, in terms of geography, in terms of the behavioral pattern. So we have the urban metro where people are like shopping and posting, and then we have the rural where they don't even know about too much of beyond a certain famous apps or messenger apps or social media. They are not even aware of how to react to the digital change which is happening. So that the entire stuff, we are not actually capturing all the data across the ecosystem in Indian scenario. Some of the places, for example, medical. I'm not sure in Indian countries we are actually capturing the medical health records, the data with respect to the hospital, patients, and various other. The other could be the agriculture. We may have enough data on the agriculture side of it, but are we really monetizing and feeding back to the farmers or the people in the agriculture industry how they can get insight out of it? The third could be maybe the e-learning and the education side. We all talk about best school, what they are teaching, but still there is enough stuff which can be analyzed and does even in the education sector. So in Indian context, if you see, the entire analytics thing, or I would say in world also, it came out from the services industry, largely from the telecom sector and the banking sector or the financial services sector, where they started giving the customized product back to the customer. So with that, when we moved from 3.0 to industry 4.0, we talk about all the base, the data analytics that you talk about the industry 3.0 and how analytics, it is now moving to new technologies of AI, CI, and everything becoming base. And the entire touch point ecosystem with internet, IoT coming in, we are capturing more data even from the machine and utilizing in the operations or the customer side. Now with this ecosystem, the 3-4 focus area on the analytics side, which I want to focus here is, one is that we have a lot of unstructured, unclean data which we are dealing with. So as a corporate, if you go to the enterprise and ask them, okay, how is the data? So they will have enough technology, enough means of capturing those information from either employee, customer, from machine. But not all that data is something which can be utilized or which can be monetized. The second focus area important here is we have enough technology, tools, but are we doing the right analysis on those? That's another focus area we should talk about. I'm not sure if all the enterprise will be confident saying that, yes, I have the right data and I'm actually doing the right analytics on that. Now that's again a very, you can say focus area, and I think the panelists will talk about some of the real life scenarios, how they will share their experience in terms of how are they using this analytics in their real actually offerings and process. The third area is which needs to be focused upon. Once we have done whatever best analysis which we believe, for example, from get data to information and then to insight. Very good. We are very happy with nice graphs, nice insights. So this is what we should do. This is what we should define. But the problem here is, are we going back and feeding that insight back into my system and changing my process, changing my product? And even if we are doing it, are we measuring that we are actually getting the value out of it, which it is done for? Now that's again a very point of discussion and debate, because we are in a very transition state where everything is around and we don't know where to go, what to do, where is the right thing or not. That is the transformation state or transition stage we are moving to. And the last but the not least is the security and privacy of the entire data piece. So under the umbrella of data analytics and privacy and security being my domain and core expertise, and I love to talk about that, under the umbrella of data analytics, we capture a lot of stuff, a lot of sensitive data, whether it's coming from machine, whether it's coming from people, a lot of personal information, and you can say behavioral information of individual, which if leaked out, it will be a very serious issue for that data subject. Now from that aspect, during this exercise, how are we ensuring that we are not crossing the boundary? See, we all focus to do data analytics for the objective to have a good, satisfied customer. Customer satisfaction is related when you serve the customer. But when you are infringing and pushing the data too much into somebody else, you can say personal arena or whatever you call it, the privacy of an individual, then you are not getting into the satisfaction, you are actually getting into customer irritation. So you have to really draw a boundary, where is the irritation or whether it's a customer satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Now that is where the privacy and security privacy becomes important. On the security side, because we have this huge system, technology, and we have no issues of storage, we don't have any issue of processing capacity, all that stuff, we have enough information at a centralized place, repository place. The entire ecosystem of analytics or the infrastructure becomes very sensitive. And that's where, from a security point of view, one breach, one leakage can suddenly leak huge data or sensitive data, I would say, which will impact the entire brand, which the company is actually trying to build using these analytic systems. So though it all sounds very good, very nice, but then we have to be very careful from a security and privacy point of view. So with that, I'll not take too much of time because the panelists are really eager to discuss on their personal views and sharing their experience. Only thing which I want to leave is all this data we talk about is more to do with the correlation, monetization, everything is fine, with an objective of fast delivery of the project, of the product or services. The speed is the essence. The second objective we all want to do is to give the best product and a customize and to get the best return. And the third is to give the best customer experience or employee experience and all this. But in this objective, let's also talk about how much are we actually doing the right thing with the right analysis, and we are considering all the risk around it also into picture. Thank you so much, and that's where I wanted to set up the context. I leave it to Monajit, who deals with analytics a lot in day and life. In fact, we were discussing and we were actually predicting how the audience will sit and how will talk, what is the type of audience. That analysis was already done. I leave it to him to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. It was a very engaging and informative introduction on data analytics. Also, next time I'm asked if I know about chaos theory, I can raise my hand. I would now like to invite all the esteemed panelists to the dais. Mr. Monojit Mazumdar, Partner Deloitte. Mr. Ramana Jampala, President and CEO, Avlino Inc. Mr. Saurabh Kumar Sahu, Managing Director and Lead Analytics, Accenture. Mr. Ashish Goyal, Chief Finance Officer, Early Salary. Mr. Chandan Tripathi, General Manager, Consumer Value Solutions, Mahindra Comviva. And Mr. Prashant Yadav, Partner, Consumer Goods Industry, Global Business Services, IBM. Please give them a big hand. I would like to thank you all for being with us here today. And I'll now request Mr. Monojit Mazumdar, the moderator, to take over and proceed with the session. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the voice, please? I think. Yeah, thank you. So we have got time up to 1 p.m. We have strictly taken a pledge amongst ourselves that we are not going to get into your lunchtime. We also decided that we are going to have more interaction than, as Vishal has said, about sharing our insights. Of course, the panel has great insights to share, so we'll not devoid them of that particular pleasure of sharing and for you to hear their great insights. As I was listening to the morning session, as I was listening very intently, the great India story seems to be emerging and emerging bright and nice. I, however, stand a little confused. And I thought I would share 2 examples of how we can use the data and analytics context to actually solve, which seems to be a contradiction on the ground. The first of which is around the fact that we have got a great demographic dividend. We are the youngest country in the world. Yet if you open the newspaper, we seem to be grappling with a huge challenge of unemployment. Job seems to be on the topmost priority on everyone's mind. So much so that there seems to be statements coming from both sides of the political spectrum, well articulated. Google has a product called Mechanical Turk. Many of you may have used it. What that product does is to use a simple algorithm at the back to match the demand of temporary workers of different enterprises to the supply of workers that you have across the demographic dividend. They have done an astonishing 30 million job versus demand match in the last 5.5 years. And of which the last 80% of matching has happened based on an improved algorithm in last, believe it or not, 9 months. We also seem to be grappling with the problem of infrastructure. Every time we talk about the investments in the country, every time we talk about the details around how bad our roads and transportation infrastructure is, that's a pet topic of everyone who's trying to invest in this country. We still, based on the last statistics of the Transporter Association of India, seems to be having 30% of our trucks coming back empty, basically unutilized capacity. There's a company in US called transfix.io. You can Google them right now. They have developed an algorithm which would actually take down 15% of the 700 billion trucking market that US has. 15% of 700 billion is an astonishingly large amount of money. And behind that is an algorithm. So can we, over the course of next 45 minutes or so, look through some of these possibilities and keeping the theme of the topic in alignment, talk about some monetization, some serious monetization beyond the theory, where a data and an algorithm on top of that can be used to deliver some of these benefits. The way we'll do this is we'll have our panelists share their insights with you in a course of 5 odd minutes, and then we'll open it up for a discussion internally. One of the panelists in the pre-briefing discussion asked me, are we supposed to contradict each other? And I said, that's like a pleasure, because contradiction is drama, and any drama is better than a drab proceedings, especially before lunch. So with that, I will request Saurabh to go ahead first. Saurabh, if you...
Yeah, thanks a lot, Monojit. So I think good afternoon, everyone. And I'll be very brief, contrary to my size. 2 things. One is, when you talk about analytics and data, I think a lot has been said about in terms of its various applications. I just want to give you 2 examples. how can we use analytics with a wealth of data which is available at consumer level or at customer level for the larger benefit of the society? Can we look at agriculture? Can we look at education? Can we look at healthcare? Three primary pillars of any transformative society. So for example, typically, let's say an Indian farmer, right, and you have certain amount of land for an Indian farmer. We have had initiatives like eChopal of ITC way back, where they started to engage with farmers through a certain very basic digital model. Today, you can use analytics and connect the power of analytics with IoT, the Internet of Things, and connected world to help a farmer improve its productivity, throughput, minimize resources, and the likes of it. You can have a farmer enter details into his particular smartphone in terms of what kind of crops they're planting, the kind of throughput they have. A telco or a service provider can easily tie up with a drone and have an aerial survey of the farm, and basis that provide inputs to the farmer of how to go about managing its crop better. These are live examples which have actually happened. These happen. A very interesting example would be, some of you would have heard about the burning of trees or the burning of forests that happen in Indonesia. Any of you have heard about it? Which creates a huge, yeah, some of you, yes. Do you know why we burn those forests? Because, sorry? For palm oil, yeah. There have been also multiple reasons, because in terms of over the years, because of pollution, human encroachment and the likes of it, the forests in Indonesia many of the plants are actually genetic mutations of each other. And therefore they get heavily infected, which then leads to a fair amount of issues in the forest area. And therefore there is a deliberate way to actually burn those farms, or rather the trees. Now you have, again, a drone which does an aerial survey. You can actually pinpoint very clearly which are the areas which are infected. You can have a very surgical strike done on those particular areas to essentially weed it out. Right? So very simple examples of how analytics can be tied with IoT and connected world to help in terms of even our basic agriculture economy per se, something which we can actually do very lively in India. That's one part of the story. The other part is, I'm going to contradict myself here and say that great applications of analytics and data which government organizations can use for. But is there a way in which the control of data can be shifted from the government or the organizations into the consumer, into your hands? Can you choose what data you want to share? Can you monetize the data at your end? Can you command to a particular service provider or an organization to say, I will share these data elements with you, and in return, we have a monetization agreement, or in return, you give me a particular service in nature. So you have multiple examples of organizations doing it. You install any particular application today on your phone, it'll ask you that, can you give me access to your phone, to your contacts, to your pictures, and we just keep saying yes to it. Because these are all free apps that we get, and we love using those apps. But at the end of the day, we had Mr. Ambani say at the inaugural address in terms of the data is the new oil, right? There will come a point in time, and much sooner than later, wherein this particular aspect of data will become in such a manner that the power will shift into your hands. Okay, and therefore you will be in a position to choose, almost like an Uberization of a data marketplace, to say who are the various firms who can give me services. Let me choose what data I want to share. So think about it. It's an emerging school of thought, but in terms of, let's say, how can you use analytics at your own end? So these are the two ideas I thought I'd share.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ramana, you bring a different perspective to the entire problem. You have been running an organization primarily leading into an insight-driven change in a business model. Would you like to go next with your views?
Good afternoon, everyone. So before I start, I just wanted to give you a couple of minutes introduction about clarification of whole of this analytics and value creation. How does it happen? So from our perspective, there are three components, all three of which are very essential. I think many people in the audience seem to be young people who are looking for a career in analytics. So they associate analytics with data science. And data science is indeed an important component. All of you know about it. But there are two other components that you should absolutely understand are imperative or important to analytics and value creation. One is the computing efficiency. All of this value creation, as Vishal was mentioning earlier, and we heard from Saurabh and Manojit, you need tremendous amount of data. And that is all available. But it has to be efficiently computed for you to go and draw value from it. So compute is an essential part of it, don't underestimate. And the third thing is, all of this has to be put into a business context. Then only you see the journey that Vishal talked about, how do you go from data to information to insight. There has to be an underlying business strategy, a business objective, or a business theme. And only when all of this data science, the computational efficiency, and business strategy come together, that's when the value creation happens. That's how we define analytics and value creation. The second point I wanted to share were, there were certain myths. There are certain myths in the data science world, and I just wanted to clarify those myths for the sake of audience. The first one is, data, there is value in your data. Yes, there is value in your data, but unless you augment your data with a lot of external resources, with a lot of external data, only then you get a comprehensive view of the ecosystem. If you start doing analytics on the same sales pipeline that you have had on the same distribution or your quarterly results or annual results, you won't find anything new. But if you add the supply chain data of your clients, or if you add the demographic data from the consumers, then you start seeing a different perspective. That's when the cognition part of it comes, which is data has to tell you why and how. And the why and how is not inherent only and only in your data, it's there in the external data as well. That's the first myth. The second myth is value creation. As the examples given by Saurabh and Vishal, where Saurabh mentioned that how can a farmer use data, that's new value creation because he's able to do something that he has not done before. But the other extreme of the examples are, if you're driving by certain region and if you see an ad for the local ice cream vendor or local fast food joint, then that's not value creation. That's being in that moment of time, you were given ahead an information that you could use, but the total number of hamburgers that were sold or total number of ice creams that were sold might not change. So there is a shift in value in one aspect, and there is a value creation where a farmer was able to do something that he couldn't do before. So make sure you differentiate between value shifting versus value creation. That's the second myth. And the last myth is that data has all the answers and data scientists create value. Absolutely no. An example that I often share is, when we start a new team of data scientists, whenever at Avlino or any other organization, we give them 2 data sets. And we try to elicit a reaction from them how it happens. So what are those 2 data sets? We give them the temperature of a given city on one axis, and on the other axis we show them ice cream sales. And invariably what happens? As temperature increases, ice cream sales go up. Very natural. Then we give them a second data set. The second data set is again the x-axis is the temperature of a given city, and the y-axis is the number of drowning deaths that happen in swimming pool or on beaches. And that also follows a linear line, which is as temperature increases, the chances of drowning increases. Then what do most data scientists do? They superimpose these 2 graphs. They eliminate the common element, which is temperature, and they come out with a graph that says, as people eat more ice creams, there is more drowning deaths. That's correlation. Mathematically, there is a correlation, but there is no causality. And identifying that causality is what leads to value creation. Therefore, the summary point, what I want to say there is, make sure there is a cognition to understand the why and how of data. Make sure you put enough business strategy into it, and apply huge amount of computational intensity to make sure you're not having any information bias, you're not leaving anything. That is when the value creation occurs. And as an example, with one of our clients, they were in the supply chain management system, and they found that the goods that they were shipping were being held by their customers for a longer period of time. And they gave us 3 years of data, and they spent a lot of money to understand why this delay was occurring. The data that they had given us was only reiterating their problem, but it was never telling us the why and how. Then we went and looked at their 3 largest clients were food manufacturers. Then we looked at the entire supply chain of their food manufacturing, and we saw that the commodity prices were dropping, therefore these food manufacturers were producing more and more food so that they can stock it on the shelves. That's that external data point that I was talking to you about. And to understand why your customers are holding your goods more than they should, we had to understand the entire supply chain and the consumer behavior of that. So that's the final point I want to leave you with in saying that this process of generation from information, from data to information to insight is not only contained within your data, there are external elements to it. Make sure you put business strategy, computational intensity, and data science into it. And last point is value, whether you're creating or whether you're shifting value, make sure you take a comprehensive view of that so that your client's ROI can be clearly defined.
Thank you. And we'll go back and revisit your point around human bias towards seeing the results that we want to see. That's a topic which would be intriguing enough to start a mock fight on the stage. But going back to you, Prashant, you actually have probably the sweetest post amongst all of us. And the reason I say that is because consumer business, which is your specialty, in India, those companies seem to have, by brute force or by brute network penetration, got the best data, at least at a supplier level, if not at the consumer level. Give us a few insights on what you see happening overall in this space, and also in specific areas that you're looking at.
Sure. I'll take a cue from Ramana first, and I'd like to first talk about what are our blessings, what do we have, what have we gotten in the last 5 to 10 years, and then talk about what else we need to do to realize or continue to realize the value from data. So first, talking about our blessings, I've been fascinated by the growth of technologies and tools in the analytics space, especially in the last 5 years, but really the revolution started almost 7 to 10 years back. The first has been the growth of IoT, mobile, and internet, which has really led to the growth of data, which is, the new oil, right? That's the foundation, that's the basis, and we have seen huge growth in this period. The second important technological development I'd like to call out is big data technologies that have allowed us to economically create data lakes, to economically integrate unstructured data, etc. And as the panelists called out, network effect in data is massive. So the ability to combine your data with external data is really what is going to lead value. And big data technologies, have really allowed us to, do that. The third is that there has been significant development and automation in analytical tools. The work for which I needed 6 to 7 modelers almost 7 years back, today is being done by just 1 or 2 modelers, right? And the maintenance of those models with the advent of cognitive technology is almost automated. Earlier, we needed armies even to maintain models. That's not the case today. So the cost of acquisition, storage of data, as well as analyzing it has gone down tremendously, opening it up to way more number of use cases than we had access to earlier. The other very important development is streaming analytics, which allows us to do real-time data analytics and, again, opens up a completely new set of use cases for us. Addition of cognitive to the analytics tool set, as Ramana also called out, has been extremely important because it has extended analytics into the human interface and into human knowledge banks. Things for which you definitely needed a lawyer, a doctor, etc. Now, obviously, we're not replacing them, but their work and the accuracy of their predictions and their diagnostics has significantly increased because now we have cognitive technologies aiding the analytics pool. Finally, I think we also need to acknowledge the open source movement. Whether it's the Apache Foundation or others, they have provided us with the tools that allow us to very economically do the work, and across the spectrum, evolved and mature enterprises can always afford the most sophisticated tool sets, but with the open source libraries and the open source tools, even the smallest of organizations with the most economic constraints can afford analytical tools. Yeah? So that is all what we have, and it's extremely exciting, and it gives us a lot of power. But as I look forward, I do see some challenges. I do see some steps we have to take to ensure that we continue to harness value from data at the rate that we have been doing, and possibly much higher rate as well. So as Monojit called out, Saurabh also called out, the first and foremost thing is that people have to feel comfortable and organizations have to feel comfortable providing that data so that we can realize the network effect in data. If we do not have the right privacy and security structures in place to make it comfortable and safe for people to provide the data, we are going to be suboptimal in realizing value from it. Yeah? So that's been something that's been talked about. The other thing that I think will become increasingly important is trust in analytics. So we have to make sure that we are using the data and the analytics in a proper fashion. How do we do that? So first of all, in the consumer world, we have to make sure we are using consumer data for consumer benefit and not against the consumer. That will be important. I should not get different discounts if I'm using a high-end phone for shopping versus a low-end phone for shopping, because that's the data that the shopping platform has for me. So and my shopping preferences and habits should not allow me to get a lower discount than somebody else. That's one. It has happened in the past, before the advent of direct debits, etc. There have been cases where a certain segment of loan customers were offered a product which had lower interest rate but significantly higher penalties because the loan giving company had insights that this set of customers was likely heavily to default on their payments. Not because they couldn't pay, but just because, their priorities were different. So those kind of instances we have to avoid to make sure that that the trust remains. Now, data and analytics has gone way beyond commercial applications into areas like healthcare, agriculture, security, and well-being. And that makes it very important that there is adequate governance in the algorithms that are going to put to place, because it's no longer about money. It's about health. It's about our life. And that governance, both, of course, we need regulatory infrastructures and regulatory policies to govern that, but we also need self-governance in the organizations and entities to ensure that there is control on what is being put out and the decisions we are being taken. Whether whether you're going to be stopped at a border checkpost, which area the police targets for terrorist hunting, what therapies you are suggested for cancer, all of this is being today driven by data and cognitive technologies. And having that governance in place is going to be very, very important. The last point that I would want to touch upon is that, we have heard that the next set of wars is going to be around water. And, sort of touched about certain use cases in agriculture. I'd like to tell you that 70% of water consumption is in agriculture. And with the advent of analytics, with the use of IoT, etc., that can be significantly reduced. 90% of produce loss is because of weather and pest-related problems, which are all predictable with analytics and the other IoT-related technologies that we have. So there's a huge space for value creation outside of commercial enterprises that we can put the data to use. But to make that happen, as I mentioned, we have to create an atmosphere of trust. We have to create an atmosphere of security and privacy, or trust in these for the consumers to be able to share their data. And that ecosystem of governance will be required to facilitate that continued growth and value creation from analytics.
Thank you, Prashant. Ashish, you are the maverick in the room, literally so, in positive sense of the word, right? You belong to a buzzword, which is fintech. And more importantly, you are transforming the way we can truly and honestly change the democratic dividend. Please bring in that insight and tell us a little bit about your experience.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I could say that we are the product of the technology and the analytics in the room. We are the ones who has been created because there is an ecosystem available. The analytics tools which came up in last 5 years, the technologies which came up, which made us possible to offer something which is at a very low cost product, a high volume game, and which has been fully supported by the technology and the analytics at the back. Just to give you a little background about what we do, we provide micro loans to the salaried employees. So somebody who is looking for a 15-day money, instead of borrowing from friend, we lend that money on the mobile phone using the machine analytics at the back, approve it within seconds, transfer the money to his bank within few minutes. So at the end, we are doing a lot of analytics at the back, the open source softwares which were available made it possible for us to use those technologies. Like there are many things which we do which was covered by fellow panelists here, like causality, which Ramana has touched, is very relevant from an analytics perspective, that whether really when you put two data sets into a juicer mixer, it will always show up some correlations. It could be, means whether there is a causality into it is the most critical piece into any analytics function. Similarly, we look at it, whether looking at a particular data point is really making a risk management much stronger for us. The data sets which are going into it, today we get a lot of data, like everybody has touched upon, that everybody looks at the accesses, the information which is available in the social media, as well as the information which is coming in through the experience which the customer is using the applications, like the fidgetiness on the app, like how many times the customer has went up and came back. That also sends up a lot of relevant data points for us to take a call on the risk management side. So what I believe that what analytics has done to us and to the world is that they have provided us tools which provides a cost-effective way to analyze the particular situation, come back with the customized offer for the customers, come back with the techniques to ensure your risks are minimized, you are able to create some products which are useful for them. While having said so, like today, it also reduces the need to hire people, need to do many things which can be done by the machine. Many mundane jobs are fully automated. The automation is becoming a theme of the time. On the other side of the table is that there is also the buzzwords are coming up. Like today, if I see any analytics or a data science, there is the machine learning, the AI is a buzzword in their resumes. We come back, when we analyze them, we talk to them, we realize that they are just scratching the surface. The strong depth knowledge is missing. So that knowledge has yet to come, yet to become much more stronger. Like the chatbots which we see, they are still to come back and make an impact on the businesses.
Thank you, Ashish. And Chandan, finally to you. And just to set the context or your conversation, while we all are advising our clients, you are actually doing it. So why don't you talk about the experience of doing?
Yep, thanks a lot, Manojit. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Chandan this side. Just to give you a background on analytics, primarily what the world has evolved into is something called as micro moments. So we are at a juncture where we are always trying to define what is a micro moment and how can I monetize a micro moment. Now, what exactly is a micro moment? It is that point of time when the millennials or somebody like us trying to do something with their mobile phones, either trying to do a purchase or trying to do a decision to buy or sell. For example, let's say across industries, if you look at, be it telcos or be it companies which are into e-commerce or into online section, all of them want to leverage this particular micro movement, and they want to understand at what point of time can I touch upon a customer when he's busy deciding something on his handset because of the platforms that we have available today. Now, the buzzword these days in terms of analytics is something called as personalization. Now, when we talk about personalization, everybody across the world, all industries are trying to do something called as personalization. By personalization, I mean whenever you are trying to do some shopping on the internet, you should get best offers in there. And whenever you're trying to book tickets for a movie show, you should get discounts on that. So this is all about personalization. Now, there were some recent studies which were made which said that on an average, an individual swipes 2,000 times a day. The smartphones are being swiped 2,000 times a day. So that's the amount of energy and focus we give to the handsets. And what we are trying to do there is we are trying to figure out, am I getting a good deal? Do I need to sell out some money by buying some shares? Or do I need to sell some shares? So it's all about personalization, monetizing these micro movements. Some studies also suggested that 80% of the people are not willing to transact with their existing ecosystem because they feel they lack personalization. And 80% of the organizations today believe that they don't do personalization. So what the world has moved into now, forget, they are not very interested as in to know what has happened in the past, but rather they are very keen on understanding how am I going to influence the purchase decision of the customers across any industry. If I have to influence the purchase decision of the customers, I'll have to undertake a journey which is called analytics, and it is presumed that in terms of analytics can give them answers by which they can personalize their benefit and help people to influence the purchase decisions. I mean, the panelists have already spoken about the structured analytics and unstructured analytics. So in terms of emerging trends, we are trying to influence, most of the analytical companies today are trying to influence something called as unstructured analytics, which is also something called as ecosystem analytics. That means what we are trying to do is not only understand the customer behavior within my ecosystem. Let's say, for an example, if I take an example of a telecom operator, previously they used to segment or slice and dice their data points basis his interaction within their network. How much data have I consumed? How much minutes of usage do I generate? What VAS packs do I see or do I purchase? But now it has graduated into the next level wherein they're trying to do something is through social sentiment analysis. Can I understand the customer in a much better way in an ecosystem which is outside my own network? So now organizations are keen to understand, does this person love shopping? Does he go and travel very often? Is he using an Amex credit card, or does he use Citibank credit card? So these are host of information which is available, and the emerging trend says that in order to influence purchase decision, you have to act fast, you have to act accurate, and you will have to pinpoint and leverage those micro movements. And in order to do that, you will have to invest a lot into analytics, with a caution that analytics may not give you all the answers that you are searching for, but the profile or the persona of the customer is as such. If you are not pinpoint and accurate enough to give him enough confidence on your brand, he will move out into something which is beyond your control. So the attention span is 10 seconds or 20 seconds on a smartphone, and you need to leverage that attention span and put your brand in there so that you can make an influence in the decision which he is trying to make.
Thank you, Chandan. That the attention span is less than 14 seconds is very visible, even in the room. So I want to go back to you, Ramana, and address a point that you raised, a very important point about the cognitive bias and removal of that. And I want to throw a few numbers at you to defend the comment that you made, to your point of making this dramatic, okay? We have 70 billion neurons in our brain. At any point of time, as I'm talking and you are listening, about 3.5 billion neuron got activated to do just this act, right? How can we undermine the bias that is created by this incredibly powerful machine called human being just by throwing a data? We will read the data the way we want to, right? How can we get around that?
Well, I think that's a very good point. We all are we have bias in our mind. To be cognitive of that bias, which means to understand that yes, I have a bias, is probably the only way we can overcome. But this also touches another point that earlier some of my fellow panelists were also saying. We often mix this issue of bias, security, and privacy. What do I mean by that? The personalization, the privacy issue. If I get to know that you're using an iPhone or you have done this, and I provide a service to you that is in line with that, which is if you're using a certain smartphone device with a certain form factor, and if I'm able to showcase an image to you that exactly fits that phone, you're happy about it. But on the same note, if I use that phone to make a judgment about you that might have worked against you, then you call that as a privacy or a breach. That's a contradiction. So therefore, I think we as users, if we are putting data out there, if you're flashing your picture, you're in New York, Times Square, waiting for a cab, and you show that on a Twitter, of course their machines will be there that will pick it up and say, oh, the person is wearing a blue dress, therefore he likes blue, he's in New York, he tries to go out to Times Square. They will make all of those biases. And then if you go ahead and use that, to go ahead and take, as Vishal was mentioning, if you use that information to go ahead and say, I'm going to hack into a system and retrieve information from there, that's a security breach. So in our mind, let's be clear about bias, privacy, and security. Bias is going to be implicit. Machines are going to analyze, humans are going to analyze. Privacy, if you put information out there, people will use it, and they'll use it for good, and they'll use it for decisions that might go against you. Security is uncompromised. Nobody should enter and hack your bank account or anything that you presume is your personal information that you don't want the world to see. If that's hacked through any incoherent means or in any unsecure means, then yes, that's a security breach. So that's how I think it's very difficult to overcome bias.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful answer. And sort of, I wanted to go back to your point on agriculture, right? It's a good problem to have because right now, only 4.5% of Indian agriculture is in some form of an organized sector mode. We all look at our computer screens and on the sky every year between March and June to see how the monsoon is going to be. How are we going to bring data to a sector which is so very unorganized and so very dependent on nature? What's your blueprint to do that? I understand it's a great sector, but how will you do it?
So I think, it's a very valid question. And my point of view is here is simple, is to say that you can only derive information or decisions only when there is somebody willing to give you information. Otherwise, it will be garbage in, garbage out. So the first problem is getting the right data for it, where you can provide the service back to the farmer or the customer. And the best way to do it is creating an awareness about it. And this is where I believe the government has a great role to play in terms of educating the agriculturists, the farmers, and people associated with sector as to what is the art of the possible that can happen in a sector like agriculture if you have the right data. So the first point is to tackle the awareness issue to say, if you feed in the right data, we can help you out with various elements today that you can do, which you're not doing today, in terms of improving productivity, crop yield, and the likes of it. So the first part to the, in terms of how do you tackle the sector from a benefit point of view. The second is to say, yes, it's not only just about getting the data from a particular farmer or the or respective to that particular land, but also various other what we refer to as unseen or macroeconomic factors, which might have a significant play whenever you do any analytics on data. Now that is hand of God, right? And even I think recently in Mumbai there was a deluge, or there was heavy rainfall. I think on the 27th of August, and the forecast the previous day was to have less than 1/4 of the rainfall, right? So the forecast can go wrong as short as 1 day prior. So that is something we will have to live with. But I think the key to success here is that the more you start using data, the better it will be for you. So if you look at the various parameters which are going to help agriculture, whether it is monsoons, various other meteorological data, soil analysis, fertilizers, culture of the soil, and various of these parameters, as and when you keep on start using this data, as and when customers start or other farmers start addressing this particular or deriving benefits from it and feeding it back, the richer will be your ecosystem. So it's a cycle, okay, and you cannot wait for all the data to come in to start analytics on the sector. You start with whatever you have. You try your best to put in all the judgment that goes into this, and then you have a mechanism which makes sure that you would start getting this feedback, keep on getting more and more data, figure out the causality as Ramana mentioned, and then perfect it.
Thank you. And you could have said that just to compensate that 1/3 rainfall forecast, the next day there was a cyclone projected, which was never to be. Right. So I just wanted to go back finally before you open up to the audience, to you, Ashish. See, as we work together, and some of us here are reasonably well-known brands, Yours is in the process of becoming well-known, right? How do you see the talent market? There is an astonishing number that came out yesterday, which says about 75% of what gets referred to as data analytics work is actually data processing, which means somebody is doing a very important act, which is cleaning the data, getting it in a certain format, collecting it, doing all of that. Now, that's a very important point, but that's not Ramana's case of value creation to the data, right? You are looking at a micro-lending situation, which is a split-second decision. Your algorithm has to be really impeccable. Do you see a talent dearth to do that? What's your experience around that?
So our experience with is that the talent is available in India. The question is that you need to train them. You need to bring the talent out of people. The existing education institution may not able to provide that at this point in time. They still teach C, C++. So you need to bring them, give them the training to make them usable. So it takes some time for train them. As you rightly said that we use a lot of algorithms at the back, but given today's open system, open source, and the amount of information available on the internet to do the online courses, to take the trainings, it becomes much easier to train them in the last 3-4 years than what it was earlier. The skill sets upgradation is becoming much more easier, much more global. So that is something which is becoming much more relevant and much more rosy for the upcoming talent which is coming up.
Sure, thank you. Ma'am, if it's possible, I'd like to open it up to the audience forum right now for them to ask questions. Yep, so if somebody could run with the mic. And as always, if there is no question, we have a question here, but let's see if you have one. Yes, sir, please.
Sir, I am H.S. Sharma, oldest living IITian of India, IIT Bombay graduate, first batch, 77-year-old. I have a simple question, sir. Always we blink our eyes for ground reality. I was in a conference, how to prevent lot of accidents, road accident. They were coming with all sorts of gadgets. I told them, sir, 40% driving license are given to color blind. You have no solution. 70% accident take place when the driver falls asleep. Where is the solution? Technical. They came with lot of gadgets, but these are the ground realities. Education. Come to my Uttar Pradesh state. The primary school education, I am a primary school teacher getting 10,000 rupees. I give on to the next person for 5,000 rupees. He will teach, I will do business. He may be educated or uneducated. We are closing our eyes to ground reality. It is such a huge, august body. You are leaders of human race. I give lecture across the world. I am the global warming group. Human race is left only for 100 years on this planet. Please form a group. Earth is getting warmer. The August was the hottest in last 150 years. It took nature 1 million years to raise CO2 level to 200 ppm. Human being within 100 years, we have raised to 400 ppm. Please form a group. Human race will not last on this planet more than 100 years. I am giving you real details. Everything, it is only half a degree. Temperature change that you are having cyclones. We have to change, sir. I am not able to understand such a heavy polluted 21-gun salute. I am not able to understand what type of thinking we have in this country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to augment your point, sir, there is a very famous book that came out. It's a 500-page book. It's called Homo Deus. It's written by an Israeli professor, Yuval Harari. His first book, most of you would have read. It's called Homo Sapiens. It says that we are going to distract ourselves because we are going to become God, a God who controls his own destiny. Deus in Greece actually means God. So as the humanity tries to achieve, through data analytics, great divinity, we are probably facilitating our own distraction. I completely agree with you. Question is, when can we stop it? Any views on that, Prashant, please? I know I'm putting you in a spot, but that's what it is.
Yeah. So definitely, there's no disagreement that we are changing the world, we're changing the planet and our ecosystem. And it really doesn't matter whether doomsday is 100 years away or 1,000 years away, right? We've got to stop it. I'd like to focus first on the positive side. I think we have the tools at our disposal. The level of awareness has definitely improved. It is not reducing, it has improved. It's definitely not at the level where you would like it to be, I'd like it to be. But I think, we are in a position to take informed decisions. The fact that you have these statistics, from primary school education, you have the statistics about accidents, we didn't have them 20 years back. The fact that, at least we know what are the facts will probably accelerate the pace at which we can act on them, and it will also probably lead to more effective steps. So, clearly, this is not to say that we don't need to take action, we don't need to take faster and better action. Definitely, we need to do that, and I'm on board with that. But I think as far as analytics is concerned, it is probably one of the positive influencers, and we should encourage that. We should encourage fact-based thinking. We should encourage fact-based decision-making and apply all the tests, as Ramana has been highlighting, to ensure we do not confuse correlation with causality. And we have the tools at our disposal to be able to discern between causality and just correlation today.
Thank you, Prashant. We have time for one more question,
yes,
please,
sir.
from the audience. Yeah,
May I? Because I hold the mic. Oh, sir, oh, okay. Thank you. Sir, my name is KK Minocha. I'm a former retired ITS officer of 1978 batch. My question rhymes with all of you, in fact, and with the senior sir, former IITian. While we appreciate, my question basically, let me state the question straight away and would need elaboration followed. Basically, what is the net effect of all this we are trying to do the analytics? Because Vishal in the beginning said a complexity. I mean, we had a simple life, as we all know, and we made it complex, and then we are trying to find a solution. Given the fundamentals raised by our senior citizen here, that moral and ethics are declining, so data analytics is working in that kind of environment. Number one. Now, what is the net effect? Somebody said you need trust. The app is insecurity. One app must trust the other one. All right, but trust and distrust, we live in a dual world. Unless at this level of consciousness in Kali Yuga, we live at a level of duality. If you raise your level of consciousness, you will become Lord Shiva, where you will love everybody, then all these problems will vanish. There will be no need for data analytics. All full of love, life will be a swarg. Now, in the NERC, we are trying to find, or if I can call it so in commas, don't please take me literally. While we are trying to solve society problems, to me it seems a patchwork. Now, let me put the question straight. The data analytics is empowering the Rakshasas, I mean the trust side, and destroyed side, the devils. As we traditionally we have, the proportion is always changing in Kali Yuga or previous Yugas. Now, data analytics is empowering net whom? The trust fellows, with all of you working with good intent, or parallelly the hackers, or somebody, as somebody said that I should not be put to disadvantage because of my behavioral. Now the intent is very bad here, that yes, I will exploit a person, my habits of, I can't pay the loan, so let me throw a cheap loan and squeeze you later, and if 10 default, at least I'll be able to recover from 8 at high penalty. So I have done my business, while you may be right, but it is man-eat mat. So who gets empowered at the end of the day with the data analytic tools, the trust fellow or distrust fellow?
Sir, this is a broad question enough, but I'm not going to avoid an answer. I'm going to make an attempt to give you some historical perspective. I'm an avid student of history, and every time a change has been brought in, the net effect has always been totally positive. Right from steam engine, where the horse owners thought that they're going to run out of business, to a word called automation, which was brought in around 1978-79 in banking industry, where all the banking employees thought that they're going to lose their job. Now, can you name a bank right now, even one of those cooperative banks which doesn't run on automation? And what is the net positive effect? Has anybody lost their job? In essence, there will always be an element of negativity to exploit the system, but we see any technology change, be it driven by analytics or be it driven by automation or whatever cliched term we throw at you from here, history teaches us that it's always going to be net positive. With that hope, I will request my fellow panelists to get any insight on this. Ramana, if you want to come in this.
Sure. So 2 examples answering Mr. Sharma as well as you. This whole data and data analytics is leading to great democratization. Let's take a couple of examples. Uber. Now, what has Uber done to humanity to answer the question of temperature, increment of temperatures with pollutants? Uber now finds the closest cab that you have called from. That means there is an indirect reduction in the emission of CO2 and other gases. So there the data is being used to A, give you a real-time service, and in turn it is also reducing some of the emissions. CCTVs. We absolutely think CCTVs are anti-privacy. Every time there is a bad incident occurring anywhere in the globe, how many times were we all felt very happy that CCTVs somehow were able to zoom in on the exact miscreant or the person who had created that bad incident, and we were happy that that person was caught and brought to justice within a matter of hours or days or so. So, like as Manojit, our moderator, was saying, there is good and bad of everything. Of course, we are trying to understand how much of good can prevail over the bad. Only time can answer that. But at least compared to some of the other technologies that were out there, I think this whole notion of data and data being available at the fingertips of everyone is lead to democratization, where people are able to take some actionable insights even at a single individual user level, which can lead to a collective good. Therefore, at least we are believing that the good will prevail or trump the evil side of this technology.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
For a minute?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
I'll just take a quick brief minute. Sometime back, let's say, you heard a person that he doesn't know how to do his own signature, and he has an Angota chap. What would be your reaction, or what would be your impression about the person? Not a very favorable impression, right? Right? How do you unlock your phone today? Fingerprint sensor is one of the mechanisms. That's Angota chap at the end of the day, right? So basic point is, frankly, both the questions, sirs, which you pointed out is well above my pay grade. But a couple of points I want to mention is, I think the world comes around in some way. We find out certain different ways of doing the same thing. But the point when I was just thinking about the questions that both of you pointed out is that today when you look at Twitter and the top 5 or 6 trends, right? Or if you look at YouTube and the top 5 or 6 videos, mostly in 8 out of the 10 cases, those would be videos which are slightly on the negative side. Either you're making fun of someone, or you are flashing a negative trend, right? Maybe the world can become a better place if you start flashing more positive trends, and maybe address these issues in some manner. That's the same point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Saurabh. That was wonderful. So thank you very much for your time and attention. As promised, we are just about 2 minutes over time. I hope you don't mind in Indian context. I just wanted to leave you with a quick thought. We have been hearing the word, the data is the new oil, right? Now, the theory of oil is it burns itself and conserves it into a different form of energy, which is very useful, right? As evangelists, as practitioners, and as proponents of data-driven decision-making, we would like to call data as the new blood circulation system. A few analogies. Every 3.5 months, the blood in your body gets replenished, it gets regenerated. If it's not regenerated, then you are not doing well health-wise, number one. Number two is it goes to every single cell of your body and energizes and carries the dirt back to throw out of your body. Last and final, if there is ever a problem in the blood circulation system, that's the steepest and the most difficult form of medical issues that any doctor will ever grapple with. We thereby think that we would actually work towards a better circulation system, taking the dirt out, making sure that cells are nourished in the entire society, in their ecosystem, through this great practice called data analytics. Thank you very much for your time.
I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their time, expertise, and perspective on the dynamics of data analytics. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank the moderator, Mr. Majumdar, for moderating the session so well. Thank you so much. And to the audience for their enthusiastic participation. Thank you for participating in the first India Mobile Congress. With this, we have come to a close of the session, but we hope to see all of you here next year. Thank you so much. Thank you.